All right, so interesting video today. The kind of stuff that we like to talk about, and sometimes it's hard to discuss it in our platform of Kingdom Come, but we're going to figure out a way to do it because we think it's important. Let's just go ahead and show the video. We'll splice straight to the video, watch the video, allow people to kind of hear what's being said, and then we'll dive head first into the deep end with it.
A lot of the black leaders are straight leading us to our demise. Okay? They have us working, doing their dirty work. For us, their dirty work, I mean the far left's dirty work. They got us working basically for them because how they're getting us is they're playing us emotionally. And they're basically saying how racist and how messed up guys are the far right and the neo-Nazis are because they need all the help that they can get. If you have any kind of brain, you know BLM is endorsed by the Soros in the Clinton family. If you have any kind of a brain, you know that those same people don't give a damn about you, don't give a damn about black people, don't give a damn. They're exploiting the black plight to make money off of you. They're using your emotions, and based off what has happened to you, they're using that against you so you can join these evil, demonic people to help fight the people on the far right. They want, or not even the far right. I want to make this simple.
All right, I'm gonna let you go first on this one.
Well, and it's not to.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting perspective, and it's not to say that we're in agreement or condoning or necessarily 100% in line with what this gentleman has to say through and through, or that we even know this guy and exactly where he's coming from.
Doesn't seem he has a Genesis starting point per se, right? So we're not.
True enough, but at the same time, you see people all over, as we've discussed, waking up in some way, or the desire in them, the longing for justice, enabling if you're truly on this quest for what is the truth, and if you're willing, if you're not too constrained by whatever your bias might be, including thinking you don't have one, but then people are able to see through some of the deceptions, and at least elevate to a higher level of seeing things and calling it for what it is. Even if there's still much to be desired in terms of understanding what's really going on here, and who our enemies are as mankind. But this guy had
he even says eat the evil and wickedness. Like he even kind of points
he
at
sees that. Yeah. Sure. So this gentleman was involved in I guess the Black Lives Matter movement for a time in his home area. It seems as if he was pretty involved in the activities in and around
surrounding
Ferguson, and what happened there. The video is from 3 years ago.
Yeah. And
then, of course, those events were prior to that. So this is all, long before our current events.
Yeah, November. He says something about it started November 4th, 2017. Like
so he's talking about this movement of a more radicalized element in the political world, and those with political agendas who are co-opting these other movements and using them for their more radicalized agenda. And so even a lot has transpired since then, and this is not even. I'd be interested to hear. I'm sure it hadn't varied too much, or it's only developed further, what this gentleman thinks about what's happening right now.
Sure. And I'd love to hear people that might have listened to him then and went, man, come on. Like, how might they think about what he has to say today? Like, in some ways, like watching it from 3 years ago and watching it today, if I would have watched it 3 years ago, I might even have been like, yeah, okay, I could see it. But now I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Like it's almost prophetic in a way. Oh wait, no, it's not prophetic. He knew about it, right? Like, so I always say with something like this, if you're on the other end of this and you're like, oh, that's a conspiracy. If that's you, I always say, how about backing up? Because this is how I like to do research this way. I like to start from a place that this is 1,000% true and then move forward. Because what I found about myself is that if you start from a place that something is wrong and then try to do research on it, you're always going to land on it's wrong, right? That's why in the criminal justice system we have you are innocent until proven guilty, not you're guilty until proven innocent, right? So with everything that we go and we look into, we have to go, it is innocent, it is true, it is good until it's not, right? So when I take this man's starting point and I go, okay, I want to travel downstream and I want to look at some of these things and see if they start to make sense through the lens that he's giving me to see things. And I believe if you'll do that, that you'll start to, okay, all right, you'll start to see more clearly with what this man is talking about, right? But if you if you're going to already rule out that what he's saying is conspiracy and it's not right, and like you said, if you're gonna hold on to your biases, and you might as well not even look into it because you're going to end up at a place where it's not true. You just start. You're going to,
because you can't reconcile it with the other beliefs that you already hold so tightly. So if you have some other beliefs that it conflicts with, and you reject, I mean, it's not to say that this guy's telling the truth, but if he is, then you got to recognize your own biases, your starting point that doesn't allow you to potentially even see the truth of what this guy's talking about.
And since then, 3 years ago, you have all these other people starting to speak up, right? You have Kanye West, you have Lil Wayne. Like Lil Wayne, I was just reading an article like yesterday where he just said, talking about Floyd's death, he said, stop blaming entire police force, an entire race, which we wouldn't agree with that. He's talking about the white race, but we believe it's all one race. Or I think he's talking about that. I could be wrong. There's a bunch of facts we think we know that we don't know, right? And that was kind of his one-liner. And it's almost like, I'm sure Lil Wayne is like wanting to say so much more there, but he's like, you people ain't ready for what I want to say. Like, I got a lot of I want to say, and it's probably about what this guy's saying, but he's like, I got some records that I need to be selling, and you ain't ready for what I want to drop on you, right? Because Lil Wayne's been very, I kind of followed him a little bit. He's been, every time, I remember on a talk show, even when they were trying to push him into the race issue, he's like, hey. He's like, He's like, look, guys, when I look out into my crowd, he's like, 2/3 of them are white. He's like, don't bring me into this. He goes, I ain't getting into this battle. He's like, I don't want no part of it. Like, he just wouldn't do it, And it's almost as if he has this kind of perspective as you start to listen to him and some of the things that he says, as this guy does. It's just he's not as willing to come out and say it. He's not going to smoke a cigarette on his back porch and just start talking about it.
Yeah, if that's what he was smoking on the back.
Yeah, that's what he was smoking.
And so again, it's not hard. It doesn't seem like it's hard for people to believe that there's, powerful forces kind of up above them, manipulating, pulling strings. And even there's this recognition, especially among the Black community, that the establishment system hasn't served them ever in the United States. And you could argue about whether that's true or not, but I'm just pointing at the willingness of people to accept that there's some sort of conspiracy, because all a conspiracy is people working together. Yeah. A conspiracy theory is a theory about a group of people working, conspiring together, and oftentimes it's with a malicious intent. Sure. They're working against you. They're subversive in their activities and it serves their agenda, and they manipulate and control. It sounds like an enemy that we like to talk about, that we all have in common together, which is Satan himself. So it's not hard for people to recognize that fact. And so just, step back for a minute and consider who, and maybe reconsider who that enemy actually is, and who, who that great and final enemy really is, but also who that enemy is using, and who is at work in the world. Right. And perhaps are they influenced, by a force, because the Bible says that we battle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual forces.
Yeah.
So that's the ultimate factor, and why our great enemy is able to work through all these people along the way, no matter what their background or their particular skin color might be, toward his ends, which is destruction of humanity.
And there's two kingdoms, right? That's the whole point of this podcast. There's the kingdom of God and there's the kingdom of darkness, right? And you're in one. There's no middle kingdom. There's not this middle kingdom that people operate in. And in biblical history, you have King Nimrod, right? Right there in Genesis 10 and 11, right? You have Pharaoh, right? You have all these people that have been a part of the kingdom of darkness, and their goal is power. Their goal is in the world,
which is exactly what Satan promised.
That's right. He promises you power, and in their kingdom, you will see chaos, you will see destruction, you will see division. And in the kingdom of God, you will see unity, and the reason you will see unity is because in the kingdom of God, He is king, right? And we all unify around Him being king, and He loves all of us. He tells all of us that we are His children, that we are His royal representatives, and that we are called to be in relationship with Him and one another, and that we're not called to war against one another. And we don't have different things that we worship here on this earth. We worship Him. And so we're unified in that worship. Whereas over here in the kingdom of darkness, the power structure is a little bit more deceptive, right? He promises everyone power, but really he's up here puppeting it all, but He promises all these people power, and then their powers crossing over each other, and then there's war, and there's dissension, and there's battles, and all this thing happen. And He loves it because He's like, I'm really in control, but I've got all these people thinking they're in control, and I'm just letting them, kill each other and kill the Imago Dei and destroy each other. And I love it because that's what I feed off. I feed off chaos and destruction.
And I'd say another important part of his tactic, though, is to give the illusion of peace, the illusion of prosperity, the illusion that things are okay, by pacifying us with certain things, whether that's money and wealth or material comfort. We get entertained by the culture, and in our world by the culture and media. And I'd say that that's a huge important flank of how we see this being carried out today, of course, and how whole segments of our population are lulled into sleep because of Hollywood and the entertainment culture and sports and everything else that has us desiring after what we see on TV, appealing to our most base desires and the whispers of Satan that says, see that? Doesn't that look good? You want that too, right? And then at the same time, in the same breath, see those people over there? See how they have that? You don't have that. They're keeping that from you. And then you
that
have...
sounds like the garden.
You have people, who understand these things, using it to their advantage, exploiting the population, kind of the masses, keeping them under control for their own political agenda or whatever, agenda they might have in order to maintain their power over you. They give you the illusion of peace and prosperity and comfort. They give you enough of it to pacify you. And I think the Black community knows the truth of this well, so that you don't rise up. You don't seek a solution. You don't try to do anything. and even in America, and Americans and Christians in America, this is the very same issue and the same strategy the enemy uses and exploits people.
Sure. And really too, the ones the black community members that are waking up like this guy and Kanye and Lil Wayne and these people that know this stuff, all they've done, like you said, all they've done is they've stopped looking at the flipping TV on the wall and the revisionist history and the narrative that it's spinning in their minds, and they've stepped back and they've looked at the timeline, because we have enough on the timeline now to know that to see truth, right? And they went, okay, so slavery ended here, right? And I start tracing, like, how have these deep blue states helped me? How these states that have been ran for 20 plus years by these so-called groups that are on my team, like, how do I see my people? Like, this is what Kanye's big thing was, right? He was like, I look at these deep blue states that have been so-called on my side, that have been giving out welfare checks and have been for affirmative action. And this guy talks about in this video, he's like, all these black figures that are so-called on our side, like how they have helped us, really helped us. And when I look at the state of my community, these are the worst places for my brothers and sisters to be living in. Like Baltimore, Chicago, LA. Like, they're awful. There's more people killed in Chicago every day than there is in the United States. And it's black on black crime and all this stuff going on. And these guys are seeing it and they're like, man, somebody's lying. I'm being deceived in all this. You know, I was talking about this the other day with a buddy, and this might be super controversial, so here we go. You think about the black church, like back when Jim Crow laws and all these things were happening, and you just saw, like, if you would have looked at, like, been above and looked at the black church, it was beautiful. Like, it was gorgeous. Like, it was glorious. Tight families, strong communities. And it's because, even in the story of God, that suffering, that persecution, it brought them together, right? And it had this just wholesome view of what they had, what humanity was longing for. And a lot of the whites, like, they thought, it's like you said, when they thought, some of these people in the black community thought they wanted what the whites had, really what the whites wanted was what they had, right? And that's what, and they wanted that. And so the enemy starts to tell them, no, you want that. Like, this ain't good. You want that. You want that money. You want those cars. And so what happened was, he starts to move them out, and this prosperity gospel gets into the black churches, and it starts to feed their minds of, this is what you want, and it starts to get them out of what was good, right? What was wholesome. And now I find our churches, all we're wanting to do is get back where the black churches were back during that persecution, that time of Jim Crow law, right? Like, if we could get back there, it'd be beautiful again, you know?
Well, there's definitely a biblical principle of how, under the suffering and the trials, that, you know, we the
early church
come together, and we're united under that, because we recognize a common threat, an enemy, and in their case, of course, it is along the way has been these outside forces that they had to protect themselves against. And, you know, there's an ugly history along the way that maybe some people, it's true, some people want to avoid discussing it because it hurts. You hate kind of owning up to it in some way, or relating, like, oh, well, you know, I'm white, and so therefore, in some way, my ancestors' descendants have participated in this, and you feel guilty or this kind of thing. But, man, all of humanity has been guilty of these kinds of things all throughout history. This is nothing new, as tragic and as awful as perhaps one of the worst expressions of it in human history might be the 400 years of a slave trade. But, man, there's been
that oppression was under Pharaoh. Like, that's always been
there's
there.
Been like
the
awful,
Jews were oppressed under Pharaoh.
Things. This is a human sin, a human expression of awful things, not something that only white. And again, the enemy has deceived us into thinking it's a white versus black, or a racial thing. And from there, of course, it's acted upon. So it's not to say there aren't people acting upon it, but people act on falsehood all the time. You wouldn't agree that they're right when people are racist, but that don't mean they're not acting on a racist ideology. So, all we're asserting is that anytime anybody acts on a more limited kind of notion of what's true, and as they're organizing themselves and carrying out their agendas and even their desire for justice, but if it's built on a false premise, they're not going to get to the right solution. And so that's where this man in this video is talking about, hey, you got to see this. Hey, yeah. I know you care about your community and the people in your community and yourself and your own future, but you got to see in that you're being deceived, and you got to see.
They don't care.
Yeah, they don't care, and the people above you are exploiting you and using you for their agenda, and
they don't care because their starting point is garbage. Their starting point is not, you're created in the image of God, and therefore, we have one race.
And even more pointed than that, those that are really pulling the strings, their starting point is evil.
Yes.
Like they want to destroy you. So someone who has their starting point as such, the absolute contrary and opposite principle of the image of God and God's love for all of humanity, one human race, the opposite starting point is the one that is manipulating and controlling and sowing all these seeds of division. And it doesn't mean that those who have, are trying to align themselves with God, whether they're, the Christians out there and they tend to be conservative and Republican and all these things. That doesn't mean they've got it all right and it's all righteous and got it figured out, because of course you're going to find problems in big problems in everybody, because we're all sinners.
Yeah.
And even, in principle up in their institutions. But where is at least the attempt of being rooted and grounded? Where's their starting point attempting to be? And in whole, in general, it is an attempt at being rooted in who God is and what He says.
Sure, and it's the difference of listening to the stated agenda and backing up and trying to figure out the intentions of the agenda, like the real side of the agenda, right? And that's what I feel like this guy and these other people that are starting to speak out against it, they've stopped listening to the stated agenda. And they've backed up and they went, okay, you say that abortion laws are for my good, but let me back up. Where are all these abortion clinics at? Oh, they're in all my black communities where they're allowing me to kill my next generation freely. Okay, where are all these welfare laws at? And they say the stated agenda is that it's good for me so that I can have money to pay my rent and buy food and all that. But when I back up, how have these really affected my community in a way that's not good, in a way that's kept me in basically a impoverished state, right?
A slavery,
a slavery bondage state. Okay, they say, and you can keep going with these laws,
you're backing up in perspective too. You're zooming out to see, but you're also, traversing back through history and say, okay, where did these organizations start? What's been the development? Because what the enemy loves to do is, and because, he's a liar, right? Yeah. So he uses words to deceive. What type of words are most influential to persuade and deceive? Yeah. Well, the ones that sound good, the ones that are close to the truth, the ones that appeal to like a sentiment, your conscience even in you. So the enemy knows how to persuade and deceive. The enemy knows what actually is right and good and can appeal to those very things in order to co-opt the movement who desires justice and to then pull the strings and manipulate it to carry it out in the wrong way.
And he doesn't outright lie. Like, it's not like he comes to you with an outright lie. When he went to Adam and Eve in the garden, he said, you will surely not die. You will become like God. That was kind of true. There was an element where they were going to become like God. It wasn't good, but there was an element there, right? And even in like the sense of affirmative action, right? I think affirmative action is the most racist law out there. I'm not going to go down that route. We can talk about that later. But on the surface, affirmative action looks good. Oh, yeah, we get to go to college. That's good. But then Steven Crowder does a video, and I love this video where he's sitting down with people talking about affirmative action. And he talks to this girl, this really bright young girl, and he's like, how'd you do in high school? And she's like, I did really well. I did 3.6. I worked really hard. And he's like, she was a part of all these groups and did all this stuff trying to get into college. And you see this girl who's very intelligent and she worked really hard, and she's sitting there and he goes, why'd you get into this college? And you see her pause. And he said, that's my problem with affirmative action. You had to pause. You worked your tail off. And you want to say you earned it, right? You want to say you worked really hard and you earned it. But now you pause because you don't know if you earned it or if it was given to you because of this one law. And he said, do you not think that place has mind control over young black men and young black women? Do you not think that messes with their head of going, did I really earn this? Or was I given this? Right? And then that follows them the rest of their life. Right? And it was very beautiful, like, engagement between this girl and Steven Crowder. And he was just talking about how that's how it's racist, because it doesn't ever let you really feel like you accomplished something.
Well,
And
the thing is, in the pushback.
Sorry,
often,
racist. I know we don't believe it.
we talk
Bigoted.
sometimes on the
yeah.
terms that we
Sure.
operate in, but yeah, it's important to draw back and remember that. But and people will push back and say, well, we needed some of these things to put us on equal, to give more opportunity, more of a fair chance, because there was this system that was kind of organized against. And as much as that was true along the way, to the degree that it was and has been and perhaps still is in meaningful ways, but yet who are the types of people and what is the philosophy or worldview that put that in place before? What is the worldview that put in place a racist system before? And what is the worldview that would even take things that are meant for good and exploit them and manipulate people for its own gain? And so people would point to the American system just being set up for the success of white people. They would point to Christianity as a faith that is inherently white supremacist or been used to control people, humanity in general, or a particular segment of the population. Humanity is the white, or Christianity is the white man's religion, controlling black people. And so again, step back for a second. If you have that as your starting point in your bias, step back a second and just consider again the tactic of the enemy to take what is good and to corrupt it from within, and use deception to manipulate and control people to then think what is good and something that's organized for the good of humanity is actually working against you, or to take it and to corrupt it from within in such a way so that then that thing that was established for good is now being used for bad. And you point at it. And that's the major issue with our country right now, is that in God's providence, the United States comes along and is meant for good, is meant for the best of humanity and even Christian values to have an opportunity, a space to even just be itself and take root and flourish. Not to impose it so much, but just because if you create the environment for it, and it's protected in a sense, then it will flourish. But it begins to be effective. So what the enemy has to do is subversively come in and infiltrate and control, manipulate, and destroy it from within.
And he uses people to do that.
Exactly.
And what you're getting back to is who was in control of all the slavery? Like who was at the top? Like what party was dictating that? And then when you started having these movements, these MLK movements and all this stuff, they're not stupid. They don't go, let's keep fighting it. No, they go, okay, this isn't going to work anymore. Therefore, how can we manipulate it on the other end? Let's give them what they want. Let's use that. Let's start making them think we're on their team and start handing them these things. So now they're back to being on our, and then we'll puppeteer them all the way down this way.
When the force becomes too strong to control it from without
You have to
anymore.
That's right.
Then you have to infiltrate and
Manipulate it and corrupt it from within. And then that's what's happening. And you can take this whole thing we're trying to paint with the black community and how this is the place. You want to talk about grievances? Here's your grievances, right? But it's against the ones you're voting for, right?
Yeah.
And you can take this same thing and condense it and do this. COVID-19. Where's that win all of a sudden? Right? Like, okay, so now we can't fight COVID-19 anymore because the facts are coming out. It's not nearly as bad as we thought it was or that we projected it to the people to be. We're losing the people because they're no longer perceiving it and they're starting to wake up and it's like, throw racism on, hurry, hurry, hurry. You know, and so like you see these things happening and it's like as soon as we start to wake up to something and it's like throw something else on, right? Epstein's starting to come out with some stuff, throw COVID-19, right? And you're starting to see, so that's a very condensed view. Epstein, COVID-19, racism. Look what's going on.
Well, and I'd say it's getting more heightened
It is
in
getting
that
more
way
heightened.
because these forces are getting more desperate.
Yes.
Very desperate leading up to an election to come. But I just, again, sort of step back and say, though we can point to, and it is important to look at, okay, who's perpetuating these things? Because obviously the media complex is very much responsible for creating a hype around the virus, as well as perhaps perpetuating the racial element or the tension around, what's going on right now. But even before that, and in many incidents, okay, so we look at the media establishment, and who do they seem to be in lockstep with, cooperating with? It's definitely, I mean, it's not 100%, but, in general, it's a more liberalized, leftist kind of agenda that are united here. Well, and people say and must think then, well, since when do you trust the media? Since when do you, that's the hypocrisy of it all, or the irony that the same people who don't trust the corporate capitalistic system, but yet they're believing everything the media is telling them right now.
Yeah.
They believe in the politicians who tend to benefit a whole lot from Wall Street, even though in their rhetoric they're speaking up for the common man and in the lower economic classes. They get the money from Wall Street. But even if when you take this back through history, I know it's not a clean cut thing where it's like, oh yeah, Democrats are your real enemy and Republicans are really the good guys. It's messy.
Way more complex than that.
It's messy.
Yeah.
But we're looking for trends throughout history, mainly to just simply disrupt the narrative that's being painted and that so many people are bought from. The point really is not to say, no, Republicans have always been the good guys and now you need to convert over to conservatism in the right political spectrum. No, and you realize it's way more complicated and history is much more messy. But if you look at the people who are willing to maintain their position of power, to subject people, I bet, or the modern day kind of white elitist liberal perspective that considers itself better than and will use whatever means to maintain power. Well, that sounds like a class of people that would probably also enslave people to maintain their political power,
absolutely,
their economic power. And so I in principle, philosophically, I doubt they're very far from each other. So whatever, and it just happens to be that they were called Democrats also.
Yeah. Well, and you said something that, man, I'm just going to use like the last 3 days or last week, but if you went back and we actually did this, it would probably be shocking. But you think about, you said as it intensifies, as it draws near, you think about how desperate some of the comments are. Like they are absolutely absurd. Like Van Jones the other day on CNN talked about white people have a virus. Like we have a virus. Like he was talking about the lady in the park. Like our enemy's not these white supremacists. Our enemy are liberal whites that when they are confronted with black people, if it hurt, they have a virus and they go straight to it, and it's racist, right? And you think about Spike Lee saying the other day on CNN, yep, this is what they've been doing to us for 400 years. It's been happening for 400 years. And I'm like, are you really taking today's modern times and saying that it's the same as it was are you serious? Like, that's absurdity. Like, only if you believe in an absolute absurd revisionist history would you, like, how do you even get away with that on a media outlet? They do get away with it.
And the media
then Joe
upholds.
Biden saying, if you don't vote Democrat, you ain't black. I'm like, what? That's the most racist thing I've ever heard in my life. And you're thinking about these, and it's not like it's happening every month. It's happening every day. There's an absurd comment made. And I'm like, can people, and that's what these guys are picking up on. They're like, hold up a minute. Like, what'd you just say?
And you're forced, and more and more black people are unwilling to, and in part, unfortunately, it leads people to despair and hopelessness because they are left in this place where they don't feel like they have a voice in the political system because they don't identify then with either political party, established political party. It leaves them in this place of then feeling hopeless and desperate and feeling like you got to resort to these means to have your voice heard, which is exactly where they're being pushed on purpose, I believe. Yeah. But when you see somebody like the gentleman in this video we're referring to who begins to wake up, man, just consider for a second that this is another possibility. Whether it's true or not, consider this other possibility that what he's saying.
Wholeheartedly consider it. Like I was saying earlier, wholeheartedly.
And look, because when you try to, because, you know, even just simply right now, what's being pushed in the media, in spite of what we can all see with our eyes, is in the media, all these white supremacists are infiltrating these peaceful protests and creating chaos and havoc. Because look, it's some white people. Okay, well, I am seeing the white people involved, and I'm seeing that, they're instigating some things, but I'm not convinced they're white supremacists, because, I mean, just look at them. Look how many of them there are. They look a lot more like radical left-wing political affiliates, you know, kind of looking a lot like this Antifa group that is being mentioned, that whose stated objectives is to bring about chaos and anarchy, and they're not above co-opting other movements to because they're radical, and just because they tend to be then associated with your side of the political spectrum. No, it can't be them. It must be white supremacists, even though that's not actually lining up with reality. So just consider for a second what this guy's saying, that this extreme element of radical left-wing politics, who's really, they're even outside of left and right. This goes beyond it. It's extremist for sure.
Yeah.
It's extremist ideology, and it's hard. It's actually fascist itself.
Yeah.
But consider how they're at work
it believes
to
in
exploit
population control. Like, not going down there, but they believe in population control.
Well, no,
they desire it.
Let's go down there, because if you just walk back through history like we were doing a minute ago, and you see that the abortion movement is rooted in eugenics and population control and wanting to limit black people and people of color, and the people who
don't know. Let's go there.
And the very people who established Planned Parenthood and the abortion movement and fought for that, they were explicit in stating their intentions.
Yes.
And they've also been the same people who have used vaccines in Africa to try to sterilize populations, conducting experiments on black people in the United States. Because this is the same ideology.
Because they believe in multiple races, and they believe in Darwinian evolution by natural selection.
and this race is inferior.
That race is inferior, that's right. And we are the superior race. And it's the same people that are giving you your welfare check. It's the same people that are doing affirmative action. It's the same people that are doing these things.
Because they know it keeps people down.
That's right.
Controllable.
That's right.
Controllable.
That's right. And now they're trying to still control you and trying to, like this guy's saying, eradicate you by getting you to go out until finally the other people break on you and they say enough is enough. Okay, so the law enforcement in these deep blue states have pulled back now. You don't think they're going to pull back when finally, God forbid, the other side comes out and says enough is enough with their ARs and their guns, like this guy's saying? He's like, dude, it's going to be a bloodbath. But that's what they want. They don't have to worry about Planned Parenthood anymore taking you down one at a time. They're going to take the whole other side to come out and eradicate you with their guns. And then they're going to pull everybody back. Let it happen. That's what they want. And that's not what we want. What we're trying to say, these people, and we are trying to expose this group by going, stop fighting their battle. Stop fighting their battle. And then they're going to sit up in their Hollywood Hills houses and wherever else, in their Washington, D.C. houses, and they're going to have to go, oh, dang, now we got to be our own. We have to fight our own fight. How are we going to do this? We can't stay in the shadows no more.
Well, and they can't maintain political power, which gives them the ability to have their way and manipulate things and control it to maintain their political power, but they can't do it if they lose this base of support. So it's become more desperate leading up, because people are seeing, even though and wherever you may fall politically, but even though Trump has implemented policies in spite of rhetoric that might be difficult to process and even incite things, sometimes the policies have actually produced a good, and I'm sure people will argue these points, but produced a good for the whole, for all of America. And there are plenty of people waking up to that fact. Even if they can't, get themselves to align with Trump, they see that their world is improved in some way, at least
until COVID.
And simply until they're, or at least simply that their job is secure and their paycheck has went up a little bit. And so they know they're not going to win an election like that. So they have to disrupt the perception of that economy.
Yep.
And a global pandemic that shuts everything down is awfully convenient for that. And then that's not working out. Okay, well, we got to resort to the instigating the race war, because that's
and
always
if you believe in the media, right? Let's just take this. We can take literally a week to look at. If you're still convinced that the media is on your side, ask yourself this, because I asked myself this yesterday. The last 2 days in the media, why has no one been talking about how dangerous it is for all these people to be out on the streets without masks? These riders are not social distancing. Somebody needs to talk to them. What are they doing? COVID is going to go rampant. We're going to lose 2 million people. Like, what is going on? Nobody in the media even cares. Go to the streets, riot, go loot, go do these things. Go peaceful protest. We just said protesting was bad 2 weeks ago. Like, we don't need to be out there on the streets protesting. We're about to shut the country down because people were under 6 feet apart. And now we're like, go get them. And it's like, what?
It's whatever serves
the agenda in the moment. And it's like, how can you people keep believing the media? Like Dustin said, this is not a political issue. We're not saying right versus left, red versus blue. We're saying it's a freedom issue. It is a freedom issue and a human issue, a humanity issue. And the people at the top that want to destroy humanity, they are following the evil one. They are following Satan himself that was from the garden and wants to steal, kill, and destroy the Imago Dei. And it is the puppet master himself working against, and he works through all these different things: eugenics, Planned Parenthood. He works through Darwinian evolution by natural selection, creating races, inferior races, superior races, doing everything he can to get humanity divide rather than to unite under their king so that they can call it for what it is.
And you see that contrast within the week, over the weekend, in that the United States space program has been revitalized after being shuttered virtually in recent decades, and over the last decade, almost closed entirely. This weekend, we sent astronauts into space, a program that in the past had united the country, gave us hope and optimism about the potential to unite on this planet Earth, to pursue our common goals and destiny together, the positive impact that investing on such technologically progressive efforts provides to the whole of the economy. I mean, we have rallied together in the past as a nation and been proud and hopeful in these things, and we've fallen away from that. And so much depression that comes out of so much division, and then here we are moving back toward that, the potential to unite under it, to see and be hopeful and optimistic about this rocket launching and sending Americans back into space. And at the same time, cities are burning and racial tension is being fomented. And who are the powers, the forces that are trying to promote these different things? As much as you hate Trump, Make America Great has been about the economy for Trump for 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
If you look at the things he said, and then here he is supporting and promoting this, speaking and addressing the nation under this, trying to provide hope and optimism, and at the same time, you have the country burning down, and the people that represent that and give voice to that and support and try to stir that up and perpetuate it. And I know people's perceptions don't allow them to see that dichotomy, but these are the options before us. What the United States, the best of what the United States is, the hope for what the United States could and should be, and what people who want to be hopeful about our country and rally around and support it and be patriotic, they're desiring to uphold and further what we see in that rocket launching.
Yeah.
The best of the United States, and what those who want the opposite, who want to tear down the United States, who want to say that the United States is nothing but this racist, evil history, and this is the side that they're on, and this is the result. This is what they're perpetuating. Yeah, I see that they're saying that they're against it, and surely, like, the masses of people are actually against those things. But that's what I'm saying. See the messaging that you're buying into. See the narrative that you're buying into, and what it's perpetuating is the destruction.
Yeah.
You want to see the downfall of the United States.
Yeah, because George Floyd to me, when I just step back and look at it, not when I listen to the media, when I step back and look at it, I think, wow, that was a pretty united response. Like, Americans, white, black, Hispanic, name it. We all condemned it. It was awful. The police force condemned it all across you got New Jersey police force marching with their citizens. You know why? Is that on CNN? No. But they're marching with them saying, we're with you guys. We support, yes. That was horrible. You got other local police forces coming out and condemning it all across our land. And to me, it's such a unifying, it's a horrible, horrible, horrible thing that should have been a unifier, and we should have looked at it and went, wow, like, we're all in the same boat here. That was terrible. And we all agree it was terrible. We're doing better. We're moving forward, right? It's getting better. Instead, we're burning cities down because of it. And it's like, where did that come from? Like, where did this come from? Like, what are we doing? Like, 80%, 90% of the population agreed that the guy should have been in jail. You know where he's at? He's in jail. He should be prosecuted. You know what happened? He was prosecuted. Why are we burning stuff?
Well, and the people, and much of the people, whether they're Black Americans or whether they're kind of on the left side politically, a huge percentage of those people agree and see perhaps can see the good in uniting, but then there's this voice that says, no, don't accept that. this injustice is more systemic, and so don't be satisfied. Focus on the division. Focus, and at the same time as you have the voice, you have the provocateurs on the ground, busting windows, spray painting, both instigating the mob into action to incite violence, and at the same time to allow the cameras to focus in on it, and not the thousands of people more peacefully. Although they're saying, it's people are assembling peacefully, but yet here's this mob, and
everything's on
things
fire.
are burning. Yeah, but it's not. The majority of these people who gathered together didn't want that. They really wanted justice. And so again,
but you got justice. That's my point. Justice was served.
But then it's coming back around to, hey, is your movement, is your desire, is your people group, is your demographic, is your voting bloc being co-opted by people who don't have your interest in mind?
Absolutely.
And those people, maybe they're white, maybe they're black, it doesn't matter. They're against you.
Right. And my point is, if you take the media off your screen altogether and you just step back and you look, you go, our country's headed in a good place. Like white, black, everybody, we condemn this. We condemned this. You think we would have universally condemned this back in flipping the 1920s and no, there'd have been all kinds of people being like, yeah, hang that sucker, that's good, yeah. No, we don't do that. We universally condemn this action, right? And I'm just like, man, just step back from that and let's go, yeah, that's awesome. We don't want any part of this anymore in our country, right? And instead we listen to that stupid tube and that the media outlets which want to convince us we're still as racist today, or whatever that term means, as we were all the way back then. Jim Crow, man, he's a coming back. Look at these, we're hanging them next week. And I'm like, what? I'm like, where is this coming from? This is absurdity. But look what it's causing. Look what it's doing, because we're buying into this narrative. We're buying into the garbage that they're pitching to us. But not everybody is. We're waking up to it. And I'm telling you, we're going to wake more and more up to everything that's going on as we move forward, because they're running out. They're running out of ammunition. They don't know where to go. They're saying absurd things because they're freaking out right now, because the world's waking up and the United States is waking up, and they're going to lose this fight. They ain't winning. And they know it.
Well, and we hope to we realize that it's, people have different points of view than we do. And we're open to that conversation. People might sit, they might hear us and well, you guys haven't experienced it yourself in this way that others have. You don't know, you need to hear that other perspective. And so we hope in the coming, weeks and just going forward in our conversation together to invite others in on a conversation, to have different kinds of conversations, to maybe argue on some of these points, but to do it in a civil way, to talk about ideas, but to hopefully unite in the end around, and let's get at the truth. What is actually true?
Yeah. And
what can we as a community here where we live, as well as just all of humanity, how can we you can unite on falsehood.
Amen.
And it's going to lead to your
Amen.
ruin. But if we all want a better future for ourselves, our children, all of humanity, then we have to unite around the truth.
Yep.
And that means taking it back to the most basic truths that hopefully we can agree on. And then that means wrestling with contemporary events and other things to get at, hey, what's really going on here? And how much of the truth can we know here? And how much can we at least find some common ground and unite about what is our common good, and recognizing some common enemies, and acknowledging that maybe that's not who we think it is.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not so easily divisible along some classic political lines, or maybe it's recognizing, hey, this person or this group who I thought was on my side, they're not. And these people who I thought were against me,
they're not.
Maybe they're not.
Yeah.
So our hope is that God will help us further a conversation, because this is a battle of ideas.
Yep.
And we know it's a spiritual battle. We're praying for eyes to be open.
And the only way we can get there by always drawing back to our starting point of one race. right? The only way we can compromise these things, we can find this common ground and find this compromise, is always being to retreat back to go, hey, look, we're one race. Because if you buy into the multiple race agenda, there's no compromise. There's no unity. There's none to be found. You might as well get ready to fight, because that is that is what will lead us into war. This multiple race ideology, which is a lie.
And there's only one race ideology.
Yeah.
And that's
right.
Christianity. That's the Bible.
Right. That's right.
That's the perspective that God made us all in the image of God. And so, that means wrestling with that too.
That's right.
We look forward to it.